Welcome to Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. Now, technicalities, this is the most recent in the storyline because it takes place right after Recoded. The game starts off with essentially Mickey telling Sora about his job, and then now there's a cloud of darkness coming, and now they need to become Keyblade Masters. I mean they, as in Sora and Riku. Because, yet again, like Chain of Memories, this is a Sora and Riku story. Man, no love for Kairi, I swear. I mean, we even had one where the trio actually had the girl participating. We actually had two of them. It's just Kairi seems to not do anything in these storylines. Despite the fact that she now has a Keyblade, she's not put up to the Keyblade Mastery test. It's just Sora and Riku. But beyond that, so there's only one Keyblade Master able to teach, and that's Yen-Sid. And I say teach because I guess, we don't know if Mickey's a Keyblade Master or if he's still an apprentice under Yen-Sid. But Yen-Sid is the only Keyblade Master that can do the Mark of Mastery, is essentially what I'm getting at. And so, Yen-Sid puts up this trial for both Sora and Riku to essentially go into the Dream Worlds. What are the Dream Worlds? Essentially, Dream Worlds are when the world gets succumbed to the darkness, but there's still something wrong with them when the world was saved at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. And so they sort of go into a slumber. Think of it like a part of the world, there's still something wrong, so they go into sleep, like Ven. And so, in goes Sora and Riku into the Dream World. And that's why it's called Dream Drop and Distance, because you're going to be dropping into each world. And there's really not many worlds in this game, but I like that because each world actually has a story-based impact to the overall story. I think there's one or two that doesn't, but overall, each one of these has a story element for Sora and Riku. So, when Sora or Riku, depending on who you choose first, goes into the first world, which is Traverse Town, which is weird, but remember, after Kingdom Hearts 1, we never go back to Traverse Town. So, I guess they brought it back to be like, oh yeah, we forgot about Traverse Town. It's just sleeping. But it's weird, you don't see anyone from actual Traverse Town, but we get a new cast of characters from, strange enough, The World Ends With You. Now, I've never played The World Ends With You, but I just know these are characters from that game. I know a basic premise of it. But, essentially, Traverse Town gets expanded a lot now. There was a secret alcove, a secret sector that we never explored in Kingdom Hearts 1. And Traverse Town is essentially just the introduction to what the Dream Worlds are going to be like. It helps you into the mechanics and as well as into some of the lore. Like, there's no Heartless, but there are nightmares. And these nightmares can actually befriend and become DreamWorks or something like that. It's essentially like the good dreams versus the bad nightmares. It is essentially the theme for this, because all of them are sleeping, yada yada yada. And so, Traverse Town is the only real big one that doesn't have a major story significance, but the next world's definitely. So, I don't remember the exact order that you see them in, but I have a list of the worlds the sleeping worlds that you will encompass in. So, I'm going to be talking about Sora's overall story throughout this, and then I'll go into Riku since his is technically his actually goes on to the epilogue, for reasons I'll get into later. So, the first world we'll be talking about is the Cité de Cloths. Now, this is French, so it must mean we are going to Tron. No, I'm sorry. We're going to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And Sora's story with this is essentially following the storyline a bit, helping Quasimodo and Esmeralda to essentially save Notre Dame from the judge. Frodo? Something like that? It's been a long time since I've seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame. But within it, we meet up with none other than Xemnas. Yep, Xemnas is back. For some reason, and for whatever reason, while Xemnas is talking, I find this interesting that Vanitas is actually talking with him. Talking about the same exact thing. And so, it's essentially, Xemnas is telling Sora how he's going to be a part of their game. What do I mean by that? You'll find out later. The next one is The Grid, which actually is the Tron world, but it follows the second Tron world, the second Tron movie, which I don't remember the name of, where Tron is actually taken over, and Sora is trying to get Tron back because he has a deep connection with Tron. There's no overlaying story significance with this, at least not that I can remember. It might be something minuscule, but nothing huge happens in The Grid. Next one is Prankster's Paradise, which is Pinocchio's world, not Monstro. It's essentially the world of Pinocchio, you know. It's that island for pranksters that turn into donkeys or something like that. And so, Sora is sort of learning how light can be corrupted so easily because of the land that they're in. It's a place filled with light because children are just playing and being, well, children. But then they're also being taken into becoming donkeys. I may be reading into this a little too much, but it's essentially Sora is finding Pinocchio, and Pinocchio is essentially just wants to have fun. Next is Country of Musketeers. Country of Musketeers is a little unique for both Sora and Riku. Again, I'll get to Riku's side of the story later. But Sora, the Land of Musketeers, as it sounds, is actually the world of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy as the Three Musketeers. This is when Mickey first becomes the king. I think it's hinted at because they're saving Princess Minnie, and he's a musketeer opposed to, you know, the prince. So it's more of those, Sora helps the Three Musketeers defeat Pete, who has kidnapped Princess Minnie, and with the day saved, Minnie and Mickey essentially hook up, and that's that. There'll be a lot more story significance on Riku's side, but Sora's is essentially just going through the world, saving them. And so, there's a couple of like intricate things that pop in every so often, but there's not going to be a lot on Sora's story. That's why I left Riku's for the second half. But after each world, I can't remember the exact world, because again, I don't remember the order in which you face them, but you face off with Xemnas, who ultimately, you defeat him, but he kind of puts Sora in a trance. Oh wait, no, the last world is the world that never was. Sora finds the world that never was and essentially goes in, but it was one giant trap. Xemnas fighting Sora, and Sora getting put under, ending Sora's half of the story, at least until the epilogue. Now, let's get into Riku's. Traverse Town is essentially the same thing, so I'm not going to get into that. Now, the Cité de Cloths has a little more significance because now it's during the time, like, Riku is a little behind Sora in a way because now he's actually fighting off with Frodo. It's the scene in Quasimodo and the Hunchback of Notre Dame where, like, the city's going in flames and sanctuary and all that. And so he has to face off with essentially the devil. Oh, I missed one. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to Sora's for a second. There is one more world called Symphony of Sorcery. It's essentially Fantasia World. But all that really is there is the fact that you fight off with the devil himself, Chernobog. Sorry for the little interruption, but moving back to Riku. And so the Cité de Cloths has Ansem talking to Riku, essentially saying, you might want to be careful who your friends are, just to come to the darkness and all that. Next is Prankster Paradise, where he has more connection to Mickey than the other two, but it's Riku essentially doing the same exact thing. It's saving Princess Minnie. I think this one he's trying to protect Princess Minnie. I think it's the tail end of Sora's. So Princess Minnie is saved, but now it's escorting her back. I might be misremembering that, but ultimately, like I said, these ones are the overall story and talking about the important stuff. I might overlook some small details like Riku's story here, but I don't think anything really big happens here. It's just Riku learning about camaraderie and sacrificing yourself to save someone. Next is... sorry, that was the Country of Musketeers. I sort of mixed that up. I was trying to do Prankster's Paradise, so I'm sorry about that. So in Prankster's Paradise, it's Riku dealing with the dark side of this establishment. I think he's the one that goes into the sort of there's something dark happening here, and so he goes to investigate it. I think that's what... I think that's the gist of it, is that Riku is trying to essentially fight off the darkness with his buddies and trying to make peace off this island. While Sora was just trying to save Pinocchio and keep an eye on him, Riku is trying to right the wrongs in Prankster's Paradise. The grid for Riku is essentially the other side. It's defeating the ultimate evil that sort of manipulated Tron. While Sora ends with the fight with Tron, Riku faces the main villain, which, again, I've never seen the second Tron movie, and it's been a little while since I've played Dream Drop Distance. So excuse me if I don't remember the name of the character, but he defeats that guy, bringing peace back to the grid, or whatever the name of the Tron world is. And so, the final area, the world that never was. When Riku enters here, it's a little bit like he's starting to understand what's going on, and he faces off with young Xehanort, who has made appearances here and there. There was nothing like important. He was just sort of being there for the sake of being there. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. It was young Xehanort that talked to Sora, not Xemnas. You face off with Xemnas at the World That Never Was, and that's where that ends. Again, I have this is the most recent. I'm kind of jittering around a little bit. I'm sorry for the sloppiness of this video, but essentially now Riku gets to the throne room of, I put that in quotations, of the Organization 13's world, where it's now revealed that old Master Xehanort is back with Xemnas and Ansem and a couple of other cloaked figures, young Xehanort, and Sora being the 13th character. You see, here's something I didn't bring up till now because it made a lot more sense here, is the fact that Xehanort initially made Organization 13 to essentially create the 13 Darknesses. But you see, Kingdom Hearts and the Keyblade will come back when 13 Darknesses face off with 7 Lights. And so, that's why Yen Sid wants the group to essentially become Keyblade Masters so they can start making the 7 Lights to face off with Xehanort's 13 Darknesses. And Xehanort wants Sora, is going to make Sora the 13th Darkness. With Riku going like hell, you will. It's revealed that Sora is so susceptible to the darkness because he doesn't face it too often. Opposed to accepting it like Riku did, he instead destroys the darkness without a second thought. And so his heart's very susceptible to the darkness, while Riku is essentially immune to it now. He's immune to the darkness because he's lived his whole life in darkness. And so that's why they chose Sora opposed to Riku. Riku goes to try and save Sora, but is pinned down by young Xehanort. And now that earlier on, Yen Sid and Mickey in the group started realizing that something was wrong when the organization and all these other baddies were in the dream worlds. And so Mickey goes, let me stop this Mark of Mastery and go save them. With here being the point where Mickey finally gets in, there's a Stoptaza and tries to save Sora, but is ultimately stopped by Xemnas, I think. It's one of the group essentially stops Mickey, with Xehanort getting a piece of his heart, shooting it out, with none other than Axel coming in to stop the attack. Now, Axel is his true form, also known as Lee, which you learned in Birth by Sleep. Lee comes in and essentially stops it, pretty much going, and since Master Xehanort threw his heart out already, he can't do it again. But Master Xehanort is not displeased by this. In fact, he gives a nice smile, which will give me into a theory later on about what happened here. But essentially, with that being done, Riku, Mickey, and Lee pull Sora out of the dream world, and now Sora is in deep sleep. Kind of like Ven is, but Riku goes, let me jump into Sora's heart. I'm the only one that can save him. And so he does. So he jumps in, he has to fight off with the dark Soras and all that. And he finally gets in, defeats Dark Sora, the true Dark Sora, that's been like crippling him. And all the darkness that's been crippling him. and wake Sora up, with Yensid telling Sora that he's not a master, but Riku is. Riku has now become a Keyblade master because he sacrificed sacrificed himself to save Sora. And so now Sora has to keep training to essentially Sora goes out on a training session so he can eventually become a Keyblade master. But before that happens, Yensid says he didn't know that Xehanort was this close to realizing his dream or his plan. And so now there's a rush to sort of get the 7 lights before darkness just encompasses all. And so Sora is tasked with finding the key to awaken hearts, and Riku is tasked with, after he gets all the information about being Keyblade Master, is tasked with the job of finding the missing Keybladers, which is Aqua, Terra, and Ven. With Mickey chiming up and saying, we know where Ven and Aqua is, we just don't know where Terra is. And so that essentially ends with that. The secret episode where it's Kyrie's going through training as a Keyblader, and that's about that. That's the end of Dream Drop Distance. Now, what I find interesting about this is the fact that it now shows that Sora doesn't know what he's doing, essentially, while Riku is now a Keyblade Master, which gives him certain responsibilities as well as new powers. And let me go into a couple of theories for that ending in the throne room, quotations, of Organization 13. Many people believe that one of two options has already happened. One, Sora's already taken over by the darkness, i.e. the scene that he had with Vanitas talking to him as well. Which would mean because Vanitas is in Ven's heart, and Ven's heart is in Sora's, and Vanitas has a part of Xehanort, which is all that he needs to essentially take over someone, then that means that Sora has already been infected by Xehanort. But there's another theory that Lee is going to be the 13th Darkness. And people say this because, one, he was already in the organization. The organization was made to be the 13 Darknesses. Two, when Lee blocks Xehanort's heart, Xehanort isn't mad, he isn't sad, he smiles, like he expected this to happen. And so, many people believe that in that moment, when his weapon intercepts the heart, that he's now been infected with the Xehanort heart. And so, in Kingdom Hearts 3, many people believe that it's either going to be Lee or Sora that's going to become the 13th Darkness. Because one of those two things. Where I stand in this, I feel that there's more evidence that Lee is going to be the 13th Darkness, if either one of them becomes it. I say this because in the ending, Lee says that he's been trying to create a Keyblade, but he can't do it. And when he puts his hand out to do it in the ending, he gets a Keyblade. Strange, considering nobody did the right to Lee, at least not that I know of. But if Xehanort's heart is inside of Lee now, then that would unlock the ability to create a Keyblade because it's a Keyblader's heart is now forcing its way into your heart and creating, it allows... It's a different type of a right I'll get into. It's like a separate right to the Keyblade because Xehanort's portion of his heart knows how to do it. When Lee puts his hand out to try and make one, it resonates with Xehanort's heart and creates it. And so, that's where I stand on that. I can see the other side's arguments, but I don't see Nomura doing that because Sora is supposed to be... He's being built up as this, I'm just going to say, Messiah. He is the Messiah of the Kingdom Hearts series. He holds everyone's hearts in him. He's taken on all the hurt from the people that have fallen. So, I don't think Nomura is going to go that route, but I can see him going the route of Lee becoming the darkness, but ultimately overcoming it and coming back to the light. I can see that happening more than Sora becoming a darkness. But, believe it or not, there is one more games that we need to talk about. And so I'll see you in the next episode with Kingdom Hearts Key/Unchained Key. This is the Belmont King, signing off. Have a nice day, my friends.